You don't need to buy very expensive shaft seals, you just need two. Cortecco, blue, and the metal with the brown rubber seal. The spring is also towards the crankshaft. If you do it like this, it's done in 2 minutes. Just gouge and just try to push it in here. It freely goes in. Cheers, guys. How are you doing? I'm just fooling around with my lossy case, my very first one. Project got a little bit delayed, and I want to tell you a little bit about shaft seals. The big crankshaft seal. We have two different type of seats. You know this from a different guide. There is one with a groove and one without a groove. If there is no groove, like with this Malossi case, you use a metal one. Cortecco metal brown rubber. That's the right one. If you have an older case, if you have an older case and a seat with a groove, then you use a rubber. Why? Because the rubber is squeezed into that groove and holds the shaft seal in position. So you only need these two shaft seals. No other seals needed. There's one thing you need to know about the metal one. You need to shorten it a bit. This has around 4.2 millimeters, and you have to cut it down, grind it down to 3.7 to 3.5. With this Malossi case, it was needed to go to 3.5. I tried a 3.7. It did not work out. I tried an original. It also didn't work out. What was the problem? Look at here. That's a crank. We have the small stator shaft seal. It sits here. The spring is always towards the crank cheek, and on the other side there is the big crank shaft seal. The spring is also towards the crankshaft, and it sits here on this part of the crank cheek, the stump, and it sits here, and it needs to sit in the right position, not that it sits too low and then there are stripe marks on the crankshaft cheek. It wasn't the case here, so this one is fine. And on the other side there is the bearing, and let me zoom in a bit. There we go. It sits like this, so you see that this area here is higher than the outside area, so it is important that this shaft seal does not sit too high, then it will stripe at the crank cheek, and that it does not sit too low, because see what happens? You cannot turn. The bearing cannot turn anymore. There is no problem with the rubber one. If you have the seat with the groove, rubber one, just push it in and you're done. No problem. The thing is, with these metal ones, I tried to measure it, you know, the distance here, the height here, and compare it and calculate. It's not possible. It seems like that when you push it in, that it bends. It's squeezed from the outside and it bends, and this gets kind of higher. That's the only explanation I have. And it is, as you can see, also higher than the rubber one, the inner diameter. And what I want you to show is, this is the bearing, that's the shaft seal, and it sits like this in the seat. And as you can see here, this bearing turns freely. unless you put the shaft seal in too deep, because this area is higher and it sits on the inner bearing ring and it blocks the bearing. You see? It doesn't turn freely anymore, so it needs to have a certain distance that the bearing can freely turn. Otherwise, what will happen? The bearing ring will stripe here and will damage the rubber, and then you will have seal damage with false air. So how do you do it? Very easy. You just take a grinding stone, and that's this one over here. Oops. That's a new one. Let's take an old one. Yeah, and you just take it like this. Otherwise, on a sandpaper, on a wooden board, glass board, whatever, you will need forever. If you do it like this, it's done in 2 minutes. Just turn it like this and always measure it, and then you're good. 2 minutes. Turkish. Who knows the movie? Quiet. Yes. And then after you put it in, I recommend one test. Take a gouge. For instance, take a 0.3 millimeter gouge. Because as you know, that check it out, the other guide about clutch and bearings and how fast the clutch bearing dies when you use too hard clutch springs. Take the gouge and just try to push it in here. It freely goes in. There's no resistance. 0.3 on all sides. Look, it slides in, no resistance. Because what you have to consider is that this bearing ring will move towards stutter. You know, older engines, we know that the flywheel moves to the outside, and this is because this bearing ring is moving. So when this bearing ring moves, it will touch the rubber from the other side. That's how you can make sure that the shaft seal is not too deep in the seat. And if you, this works on all sides, you see, and if you put it in even like I do, you need to shorten it for 0.5 to 0.7 millimeters. Make sure that there is some air, and then you're on the safe side. Quite a important check. And once again, you don't need to buy very expensive shaft seals. You just need two. Cortecco, blue, and the metal with the brown rubber. Nothing else needed, you just need to shorten this one. They hold forever. Everything else dies before these shaft seals are damaged, especially the big bearing is the weakest spot of the engine. Have a good one. Cheers. See ya. And if you like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Cheers. Warning, guys, warning about a wrong info that is out there. If you have a shaft seal seat with a groove, you have to use the rubber one. The info out there says that you can also use a metal one, because, you know, metal is better than rubber, whatever the explanation is. This info is wrong. You're not supposed to use this one because they don't hold in the seat. They jump out and damage your engine. They damage the case, the piston, the rotary valve. If you're lucky, nothing will happen, but mostly there is bigger damage. Do not use a metal seal in a seat with a groove. It does not hold there. Do not use it. The seat with the groove is for the rubber one. The metal one will not hold. It will jump out and heavily damage your engine. It can even kill the piston, the cylinder. It can damage your rotary valve. Just don't use it. A rubber seal is needed. Why? Because into this groove the rubber will be squeezed in and it will hold the seal in place. Seat with groove, rubber. Seat without groove, metal. That's how you should do it. Cheers.
Bist du deppert? Ein Biest!
Sorry, ja.
Bist du deppert? Ist das ein Biest jetzt?
Is when you close the throttle and the engine howls. It revs even though you do not pull the throttle. That's called false air. Too little fuel. If you have a problem with the fuel tap, then the carburetor does not get enough. It is too lean. Check out my other sounding case. If it's loose, it can suck false air at the bottom. They ankle these carburetors. So put them on a flat surface and sandpaper. Push it, shove it, left, right, twist it, twist. It can also be not tight and suck false air at the cylinder. Renewed, you do not have to take the engine out and all around it, and it can easily be removed from the outside.